that a very simple way to think about FFT is to think of it in terms of these three things. Think of it as a lens. That's a theory. But it's not just a theory as you know it. It is also a theory of a change process or a change model. My story yesterday about my difficulty translating my theories I'd learned into practice was that there was no change model in the middle to help me translate it. FFT provides that. It's a lens about how people work and a lens about how change occurs. It's a map, which is nothing but goals and directions. It is not a curriculum, but it is a truly map, just like the GPS in your car, except it doesn't have a sweet voice that tells you kind of where to turn. And lastly, FFT is equally about art. Art in the sense of being creative, but just like this wonderful Dutch painting here, but it is art that means learning to adjust and adapt to what is in front of you. In psychotherapy, that's what art is. Now I have to say, remember yesterday I told you that in a very bizarre way, besides the fact that it's not a Hyundai, my Toyota is quite simple in some ways and quite difficult in others. Lenses are, on the one hand, simple, and on the other hand, they have a complicated physics behind them. What's really nice is as a practitioner, you don't have to worry about the physics of the lens. You don't have to get in and understand the engineering and the physics behind curvature and the movement of light. You don't need to know that. All you have to do is put the glasses on so you see in a certain way. Now, lenses are just principles. They're not rules. They're principles that help you think. And remember, I showed you this slide yesterday. I know you want to write it down, but I showed it to you, so it's there. And the principles tell you about these different things. And remember, one of the main part of those principles and that lens is that we're not so interested in why, we're much more interested in how. And how has to do with function. How does it work? How does it function? So we're interested in that. In addition, as I said yesterday, the lens is about being multi-systemic. What that means is that the lens is about thinking about the whole rather than just the part. In this case, the whole has to do not just with the youth, and the whole doesn't have just to do with their bad or their behavior, but the whole has to do with what's around them and their family, the culture, the context, the extended family, the school. The whole also has to do with what's inside them and how do they work. It's critically important. That's part of the whole. Everybody is wired a little differently. We know very clearly that temperament differences are gigantic. And so that's an important part of the whole. Maybe not something we act on, but something that's important there to understand. And then there is the family system. And remember yesterday I told you the calculus of family therapy. 1 + 1 = 3. Now the problem is, I can lose track because what if you have more than 1 and 1? What if you have 5? That becomes a geometric, how do we even know what 5 + 5 would be? It would get very complicated. But you can see that it gets to be a number of different components that make up the whole. The question you're faced with is, where do you begin? Do you begin with the outside? Do you begin with their internal world? As a family therapy, given the science, our suggestion is to begin here. Begin with the way in which the bad or problematic behavior functions in the family system. And, as I said yesterday, we're most interested in the connection between them rather than one or the other. And that is, as I said earlier, the definition of function. So, if you take that orientation, if you work on what's in front of you, and if you look to change the probability of behaviors, you're working in the lens. We also know this. When families come to see us, they don't just bring their history, they bring their ideas about what's the matter. We call them problem definitions, as I said yesterday. Everyone has them. Everyone has them, and they're all different. And that's the difficulty. This is why, if you listen to the content of what they say, you get totally lost. Because there are different contents with different people. This is why, if you take a functional approach, you will look at how those different content areas work together. And you could see that a bit yesterday in the videotape. And as I said, they can be complicated, they don't have to be simple. And the last part of our lens is we also have this notion of relational functions, which is, what do they get? That's what we're going to leave for another time.